Thank you for watching my revision of my American history notes, and I'm picking it up where I left off last time. According to Betty Boyd Caroli's First Ladies, Martha Washington, his wife, George Washington's wife, was an ideal hostess, and that was really all he asked of her. She was important to the popular mind, though, and even when she was too ill to attend church, her presence was recorded so people would not be too concerned about her. On her first trip as First Lady to Pennsylvania, Packet dutifully reported on her every move, and the crowds that followed her even necessitated her giving of at least one speech that's on record when she stood in her carriage and thanked the people of Philadelphia for their hospitality. Washington did not plan on serving a second term, but Jefferson gave him prophetic advice with regard to the natural division that would decimate the country years later. He told Washington, quote, "North and South will hang together if they have you to hang on," unquote. When the Electoral College met in Philadelphia on February 13, 1793, where the capital had been moved to in 1790, he was again elected unanimously. His second term was tougher than his first. He felt betrayed when his two closest advisers resigned from his cabinet. Jefferson in 1793 and Hamilton in 1795. The newspapers controlled by Jefferson's party began attacking Washington, and he was deeply wounded, partly because he was so used to everyone's approval for so long. His foreign policy was greatly affected by the war in Europe between Great Britain and its allies against the French Republic. He wanted a strict neutrality while Jefferson wanted an alliance with France. After Chief Justice John Jay had negotiated a treaty with Great Britain in 1795, Jefferson's people began an all out attack. Washington pushed for the treaty when he found out that his new Secretary of State, Edmund Randolph, had been bribed by the French to oppose the treaty. Randolph denied this accusation but resigned from the cabinet anyway. The greatest crisis in his second term was the Whiskey Rebellion in 1794, when revolt broke out in western Pennsylvania among farmers who refused to pay the federal excise tax on whiskey they distilled from grain. The whiskey represented the greater part of their income, and they didn't feel that the government had the right to tax it. To prove that the feds had power to enforce taxes, Washington sent 15,000 militiamen to Pennsylvania, and the revolt was squashed. The Jay Treaty helped stimulate trade and improve the economy in his last year. But even though efforts were underway to draft him for a third term, he published an eloquent farewell address in September of 1796, setting an important precedent of the two-term president. He died and was buried in his family vault on his estate of Mount Vernon in Virginia in 1799. One of his former officers, Henry, quote, Lighthorse Harry Lee, gave the eulogy that contained the famous phrase, "First in war, first in peace, and first in the hearts of his countrymen." He was second to none. I'll leave it up to you to investigate the myths around his youth, like how he supposedly chopped down his father's cherry tree, and when asked if he allegedly said, "I cannot tell a lie," that kind of stuff. Martha followed him in death at Mount Vernon in 1802. Much of those little anecdotes, throwing a coin across the Potomac River, chopping down the cherry tree, I cannot tell a lie. Much of that stuff came from a Parson Weems, a Mason Weems, who wrote a biography of Washington early on, and it's not substantiated by anything else. So it may have just been stuff he made up. All right, so let's talk about something else here. In an odd side note, some interesting words appeared in the late 1700s in America. Words like bogus, which meant a fake coin in 1797. Eventually, anything that was fake could be called bogus. The word veteran had only meant someone with experience, but a book published in 1798 specifically referred to those who had fought in the Revolution. It wasn't until 1848 that we started using the term vets as a shortened form of the word. When Presbyterian James McGreedy took religion to the wilds of Kentucky, holding camp meetings for the pioneers, these meetings also began to be called revivals. Now, speaking of revival, with the established state-funded churches now gone, all Christian denominations practice what the old Puritans would have called experimental religion, and I'll mention that briefly when I get back the next time. So thank you for watching my American History Notes Revised. Please click like if you watch this and you liked it. And if you have something you want to say, don't hesitate.